Hello and welcome back to the Wasteland, everybody. Welcome back to some more Fallout New Vegas. Today we're going to be talking about all of the energy weapon pistols, and we're going to be ranking them in our tier list. So let's hop right into this and talk about each one. The very first one we have is the Alien Blaster. The Alien Blaster has been in basically all the Fallout games. I think it's been in all the Fallout games so far. In this game, you do need to have a trait to get it. You need to have Wild Wasteland, and you have to go far north just above New Vegas. Once you actually head up there, instead of the raiders that are usually up there or the mercenaries that are usually up there will be 3 aliens. Once you kill the captain of the aliens, they will have an alien blaster and they will have ammo for this. This does take a unique ammo type with the alien power cells, and this is a very limited resource. You can only have so much of this throughout the game. The requirements to this are 75 energy weapons, but only 1 strength, so all you really need is energy weapons to use this effectively. It does high damage, really high damage per second. It has a maxed out crit chance at 100 times crit, although it does have lower crit damage than it does regular damage. Not that that matters since you hit a crit every time. Action points are pretty good. Spread is 0, so it actually doesn't have any spread, and it holds 10 shots. The major downside to the Alien Blaster is its ammo. You only have a limited amount of shots throughout the entire game with it, and then once you use up those shots, the Alien Blaster is completely worthless. This is tied to a trait as well, although Wild Wasteland arguably doesn't come with any sort of upside or downside unless you really like the Gauss rifle, which I know a lot of people do. So the Alien Blaster kind of fluctuates anywhere from S tier to D tier. It's D tier if you just don't have ammo or if you don't want to use up the ammo. It's S tier if you have the ammo and you're willing to expend it. So I guess I'll put the Alien Blaster up into S tier, assuming you have ammo for it. Up next we have the Euclid C Finder. This one is a very strange weapon, if you can even call it a weapon. You have to do a quest before you can actually even use this thing as a weapon. You have to do That Old Sun, I believe, where you have to go through the facility, and then once you're given the option of where to reroute the power, you have to reroute it to this weapon. Then you have to go to Freeside and buy this from a kid. The amount that you have to pay really depends. If you pass a barter check, it's extremely low. If you don't, it's 1,000 caps. This weapon only gets 1 shot per day. You have to wait a full 24 hours before you can use this weapon a second time. It has the same reload animation as the Alien Blaster, interestingly enough. It does pretty high damage once you actually fire the laser down from the sky to hit something. It's basically the Hammer of Dawn from Gears of War. It does pretty good damage. Obviously, it has terrible damage per second because you have to wait a whole 24 hours. It actually has a 50 times crit chance, although it has 0 crit damage, which is bizarre. I don't know why they put that in the game. And it weirdly enough does have some amount of spread, although that usually doesn't matter with the space laser. As long as you can sneak up on something and put the space laser on it, you can usually do really high damage to it or just straight out kill it. But it's so niche that you're never really going to be using it for an actual weapon. You're going to be using it more just because it's fun to use. It also weighs a lot. It weighs 15, so it's heavier than I think any other handgun in the game. Yeah, this one is absolutely D tier if you want to use it as a weapon, because it's just so impractical to be using as a weapon. But it is a super fun weapon to carry around and to use every once in a while. And I guess you're not carrying any more weight with ammo, assuming you're playing on the hardcore difficulty. So there's at least that, and you get to have a light show at least once per day, so that's pretty fun. And then up next we have the Humble Laser Pistol. We finally have a normal weapon on our tier list. The Laser Pistol is probably the very first laser weapon or just energy weapon that you're going to get to use in the game, because if you pick energy weapons as your tag skill, you can always get this, as well as there's always one in Doc Mitchell's house. You could potentially also buy the Gunrunner's Arsenal version of this as well, which can be modified, and you can buy that from basically any trader. Almost any trader will have, assuming they sell guns, will have an energy weapon that you can buy, either this or the plasma pistol, one of the two. This requires 0 energy weapons and only 1 strength, so any build can use it pretty effectively. It does fairly low damage per shot. It has good damage per second though. It has an above average crit chance at 1.5 times, has average crit damage, has very low spread. It's actually quite accurate. It holds 30 rounds, and it actually has decent health for an energy weapon. Most of the time energy weapons can break fairly easily. Laser pistol usually is okay, as well as it's not super difficult to find laser pistols to fix this with. For modifications, it can have 3 of them. It can have combat sights, which make it so you can ADS with it. The focused optics, which gives it 3 more damage. That's a pretty big buff for the laser pistol. And then the laser recycler, which makes it so every 4th shot returns itself back to you, which can be really good. You can save a lot of ammo early on if you end up finding that. Traders can have any of these parts as well, so it's not super uncommon to find these early on. And the laser pistol is pretty decent. It'll serve you well, although it does get outclassed by a lot of the other energy weapons as time goes on. So I'm going to put this into C tier. I think it's a good baseline for the energy weapons, at least the energy pistols. Then up next we have one of the unique versions of the laser pistol. This is the Compliance Regulator. This one is in the Honest Hearts DLC, and this is found in the Fallen Rock Cave. This one, once again, has 0 energy weapon cost and only 1 strength, so any build can use it. It has lower damage than the energy pistol and lower damage per second. Other than that, it's basically the same stat-wise as the regular laser pistol, with one major exception. It does have a unique ability. When it does hit a crit on an enemy, it will stun them. It'll paralyze them for 10 seconds where they can still take damage. That's actually really strong on this one, and it's usually stronger in combination with something else rather than just by itself. Because if you stun something, you can then shoot it to death with the laser pistol, assuming it's not something that's really tanky. But it is generally better to shoot something with this, stun it, and then switch to another weapon so that you can shoot and do more damage with it. I'm still going to put this one in C tier, but I'm going to put it above the regular laser pistol. Much better in combination. When it's by itself, it's still pretty good, because paralyzing anything is really strong. If you've ever played an unarmed build and went with Paralyzing Palm, you know how strong Paralyze can be in this game. And then we have Pew Pew, the other unique laser pistol. I guess there is technically one more with a missing laser pistol, but I didn't want to include it because it's basically just a worse laser pistol, and it's just for a quest. Pew Pew is the unique laser pistol that you get from completing the Sunset Sarsaparilla quest. You have to get 50 star caps, talk to Festus and turn those in, and then go through the Sunset Sarsaparilla plant, and it can be found in the back. This one's a very odd pistol because it only holds 10 shots, but it takes 5 ammo every time that you fire it, rather than like the regular laser pistol or Compliance Regulator, which only takes 1 ammo each time you shoot it. This still requires 0 energy weapons and 1 strength, so any build can use this effectively. It does very high damage per shot and has pretty good damage per second, however you are going to be needing to reload frequently, and it has a pretty high crit modifier at 2.5 times, which is great, as well as all these laser weapons can be affected by the Laser Commander perk, which is a very good perk for an energy weapons build. Pew Pew is pretty good, although I don't find myself using it that much even when I'm using an energy weapons build. It doesn't have high health, so it can break quick, not that that usually matters if you're running jury rigging or if you have laser pistols, which are very easy to find. Having 2 shots makes it so it is a little bit sluggish for killing crowds. Still fairly solid though. I'm going to put Pew Pew up into A tier because of how high its burst damage is. I do like it for that reason. The plasma pistol could also be one of the first laser weapons you find. It's very common for any trader to actually have this. This requires 0 energy weapons and only 2 strength, so almost any build can use this, or I guess if you drink a beer, then any build can use this. It does good damage, it has decent damage per second. It has an above average crit modifier at 1.5 times. It does good crit damage. Its action point costs are fine. It has a little bit more spread than any of the other weapons we talked about, but it's not by a huge amount. It's still fairly accurate. The main downside that a lot of people point out with the plasma pistol is just the projectile velocity, where the projectiles have to take time to get to the target, whereas some of the other energy weapons like the laser pistols basically go instantly. They're almost hit scan weapons. These ones, not so much. You do have to lead a little bit. It's usually not that bad though. And with one of the mods that this one can get, it does help it quite a bit. If you do have the Gunrunner's Arsenal version of this, you can get 3 mods onto it. You can get the High Energy Ionizer, which gives it 7 more damage. That's a nice buff. You can get the Magnetic Accelerator, which doubles the projectile speed. That makes it much better. And then you can also get the Plasma Pistol Recycler, which refunds every 4th shot. This does require 2 ammo every shot, so that is something to consider as well. It holds technically 32 shots in it, but it only actually shoots 16. Which is still a decent amount for a handgun. It's a pretty good weapon overall, and if you can't get one of these early on, they will carry you pretty well, I would say. Later on, they do fall off a little bit, so I'm going to put this on the low end of B tier. It can pretty much carry you right to New Vegas. Then we have the Plasma Defender. This one is also a pretty cool handgun. I like this one quite a bit. And this one requires 50 energy weapons and 2 strength, so again, not a whole lot of strength, although most energy weapons don't require a whole lot of strength, which is great. This one does good damage per second. It has really nice sights too. I like this one's sights quite a bit. This one actually only has an average crit modifier with still having decent crit damage, average action point cost, good spread, and this one does have a Gunrunner's Arsenal version, which can also have 3 upgrades to it. You can put a scope on it, which has a short range zoom similar to the 9mm scope, which can be kind of nice if you like that. You can get the stabilizer to it, which decreases its spread, so it's actually really accurate then. And you could also get the high capacity terminal, increasing its magazine size by double, so you get twice as many shots. This one is similar to the plasma pistol, where it does consume 2 energy every time you use it. So again, it holds 32 shots, but it's 16 unless you get the upgrade, and then it is actually 32 shots. I would say that the Plasma Defender is a pretty solid option for a handgun for energy weapons. I'm going to put it high B tier, maybe low A tier. Alright, and then up next we have all 5 of the sonic emitters. which the sonic emitter has always felt like a very strange weapon for me to use. I've never really been super impressed by these, although they do actually have pretty good damage and pretty good stats overall. They've just always felt really awkward to me. First up, we have Gabriels Bark. This one requires 50 energy weapons and 2 strength. I believe all of them have that. It has pretty good damage, not the highest damage per second because it does shoot fairly slow. The projectile speed also depends on which of these modifiers you have on them. You can change these at the jukebox and the sink. This has kind of lowish crit damage for some of the energy weapons. Average crit modifier, average action point cost, decent spread. This one, as well as all of them, do extra damage towards robots, as well as they do extra damage towards power armor. With Gabriel's Bark, its unique ability is when you hit a crit, it knocks down enemies. That can actually be pretty good. Knocking down an enemy is one of the more useful things that you can do in this game. So it's similar to something like the Compliance Regulator, where if you paralyze something, it does do pretty well against most enemies. This one in particular, though, does take 2 shots, so you only have 12 shots in total with it. But overall, this one is actually probably one of the better ones. I do like Gabriel's Bark, so I'm going to put this one into B tier. Up next is Opera Singer. This one only requires 1 ammo. Other than that, it has the same exact stats as the other options. It's just with this one, it has the unique ability of dismembering enemies, or critical strikes have the dismembered effect on enemies. That can be pretty good against certain enemy types. I don't think that this can just trigger and outright kill bigger enemies, though. At least it didn't seem that way when I was using it. It seems to have an extra chance of crippling limbs too, which can be really good against certain enemies. Fast-moving enemies like Cazadors and Deathclaws, it can be really good. This one I would also say is like B tier. I think it's fine. Then we have Revelation. This one is the non-unique version, or I guess the least unique version of the sonic emitter. This one is always set on the sonic emitter when you have it, if you haven't changed it at the jukebox. This one also only consumes 1 ammo per shot. This one has the same exact ability as the Compliance Regulator, where if you shoot something with it, it will then paralyze it for 10 seconds. That's pretty good. I still usually end up using the Compliance Regulator over this one, though, just because the Compliance Regulator is so much faster to actually shoot. So I'm going to also put this one into B tier above the Compliance Regulator because I think it's a better weapon than the Compliance Regulator. However, I would use the Regulator over the Sonic Emitter if I just wanted the status effect, and that's probably the main reason why I'm using it. And then I would just switch off of that to a different energy weapon. Then we have Robo Scorpion. Robo Scorpion is my favorite out of all of them. This one actually does higher damage. It consumes the most amount of ammo, though, and it has the slowest moving projectile. But once you do hit a crit, it's basically like also shooting something with a 40mm grenade launcher. It will cause it to explode, dealing high damage to everything around it. And that's pretty awesome. I actually like this one quite a bit. This one I still don't think is amazing because of the amount of ammo and the slowness of the shot, but I'm just going to put it B tier as well. And then our last one is the Tarantella. Tarantella also does higher damage, but it does consume more ammo. It consumes 3. And what this one does is when you hit a crit shot, it lights things on fire. That's pretty good. I don't know if this is actually affected by the Pyromaniac perk. I would think it would be. Could be wrong about that, but yeah, Tarantella was also pretty fun. Still probably going to give it a B tier because it's not always best to be lighting things on fire. And all of these weapons kind of have the same issues where they don't have that high health so they can break quickly. The projectile just doesn't move very fast, so certain enemies can be kind of hard to hit at range. And I would just usually rather have something else using my energy cells than these weapons. They're not terrible weapons by any means. I would say that they're all above average weapons. It's just that they've always felt really awkward to me, so that's why they're all right here in B tier. As to which one's the best or the worst, I think it depends on what you want to use it for. My favorite one is the Robo Scorpion because it explodes. And up next, we've got the Recharger Pistol. The Recharger Pistol is a pretty cool weapon. This one actually doesn't have any ammo at all. It just recharges itself naturally, so you can have infinite ammo with this. This requires 50 energy weapons and 2 strength. It does okay damage per shot. It does pretty high damage per second, although the damage per second can vary quite a bit depending on how much charge you have in it. If it's fully charged, it has pretty high damage per second, at least compared to the damage that it does. If you don't have high charge in it, though, it's fairly low damage per second. It has a slightly above average crit modifier with fairly low crit damage. It has very low action point cost, so it's actually really good in an action point build, and it does have a lot of health. It does weigh quite a bit, though, at 7, so it's one of the heavier handguns in the game. This one, I think I'm just going to put it into C tier. I think it's actually a pretty decent handgun, and if you were just taking it because you didn't want to carry around ammo with you, it's pretty good in that way. It's not as effective as some of the other energy weapons, though, assuming you have strong energy cells for them, or you just have an abundance of ammo which case then I would say that they're about equal in terms of usefulness as like something like a laser pistol. Then we have the unique version of this. This is the MF Hyper Breeder Alpha. This is the unique version you can buy in Novak. This one also requires 50 energy weapons and 2 strength. This does higher damage per shot than the standard recharger pistol. It does really high damage per second, as this weapon is basically a submachine gun. It's full auto, and it has submachine gun crit modifier, so pretty bad. Okay crit damage though, pretty good action point cost. It does have more spread than I think any of the other energy weapons we've talked about. It's still not that bad for a handgun though. Still weighs quite a bit at 7. Although it does have really high health, so it does take this thing quite a while to break. This one also, interestingly enough, only holds 10 rounds in it, but it recharges about twice as fast as the regular recharger pistol. Maybe it's actually even higher than that. This one's actually really good. I like this one a lot. If you want basically the equivalent of a laser submachine gun, this is probably your best option, besides taking like the laser RCW, which does look really awesome. But if you want it in a handgun slot, then this one is a pretty good option for that. As well as you don't need to carry around ammo for it, although that is a little bit limiting for it. I'm still probably going to put this one fairly high, though. I'm going to put it into A tier. I think it's actually a pretty good gun to be carrying around. The pulse gun is actually not a unique weapon, although it is extremely rare. Most people don't sell this, and it's very hard to find. Sometimes the fiends can have it, but it's fairly unlikely that they have it. There is one that's guaranteed in Vault 34, so you can pick it up there. This one requires 25 energy weapons and 2 strength. This one has very low damage per second, very low crit damage. It has actually decent action point cost, and it's fairly accurate. It does consume 5 ammo every time you shoot it though, so you only get 5 shots in total with this. It does insanely high damage towards robots and really high damage towards power armor, and then no damage towards anything else. So this one also fluctuates a lot on the scale as to what you're using against. It still doesn't have high health like most of the energy weapons, so it can break a little bit quick, but that usually doesn't matter if you're only using it towards robots. And if you're just using this towards robots, it's probably S tier because of how much damage it does do. So if you want to take this to Old World Blues, it can do a lot of damage there. Everywhere else, it's going to be D tier and doesn't really help you out that much. So I think I'm going to put it there. And then we have our last energy weapon pistol, which is kind of a weird one to say. It's the flare gun. This can be found in the Lonesome Road. You can find this kind of all over the place. This requires 0 energy weapons and only 3 strength. This is a single shot flare gun that takes the flamer fuel. It requires 10 of that per shot that you use. This has very low damage per second. It does have a burning effect, which is affected by the Pyromaniac perk, which helps it slightly, but still not that great. It has above average crit chance, although very low crit damage. It also requires a decent amount of action points to use this, which is kind of interesting. It does have one unique effect, though, that does make it kind of useful, and that it frightens abominations. So if you fire this at the cave crawlers, if you fire this at death claws, if you fire it at night stalkers, they will usually flee from you. That is pretty useful. However, it doesn't really work on anything else, and it's not a good weapon to be using on anything else. As an actual weapon, this one is absolutely D tier. It is probably the worst of these weapons. I think I would rather use the pulse gun or the finder over the flare gun to fight most things with. Tell me your thoughts down in the comments below on which energy pistol is your favorite, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'll talk to you guys next time. Bye-bye!